While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers who are in or fast approaching retirement. You've tuned in to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where we're dedicated to help you embrace the calling that God has been preparing for you for years. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and I'm joined by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We're here just to check out, to help you find purpose and meaning and joy in your retirement years. Check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. Bruce, you have written this book, Finding Freedom. The book is Finding Freedom, Understanding the Power of a Future-Funded Ministry. And we're in a series of a couple of podcasts. We did one just recently that talked about finding the DNA of meaning. And this next section, you said, well, let's talk about going from black and white to HD color. Now, only people of the retirement generation can actually understand that reference. And I understand it because I loved watching the Andy Griffith episodes and I love Lucy in black and white. But by the time I came around, there was sort of color TVs. You've done retirement planning for decades, Bruce, for decades. What does the average retiree think retirement will look like?
The average retiree thinks that retirement will look different than their working years. It will look different. Now, when you say, well, yeah, but how does it look different? That's where you get the black and white to the color HD issue. Because the way that most people see what's coming is in black and white, whether they think of it that way or not. It doesn't have a lot of definition to it. It's got a lot of gray lines to it. It's kind of foggy. They know it's different than where they've been. They're not totally sure exactly what that means. As a matter of fact, the other day, Judy and I took a few days off, and we were up on the Big Thompson River up in the northern part of Colorado. Absolutely beautiful. And I said to Judy, I said, we got to take some pictures here because this is just too beautiful. And I took out my camera, and there came up, not my camera, I took out my phone. And on my phone, went to the camera section, and there came up something that I frankly hadn't seen before. I had the ability to be able to move the, not a dial, but to move the options from black and white to vivid color. And so I could take the same picture in black and white, or I could take the same picture in vivid color. And so I took a series of pictures. There was this beautiful elk that decided to frolic in the river in front of the cabin that we were at, and it was just awesome. So I decided to take some pictures in black and white. And then I took some pictures in kind of medium hue. And then I took some pictures in vivid color. And later in the afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch and listening to the river just rush by and in this absolutely beautiful setting, and I looked back at those pictures of the elk. Now, seeing it in black and white was good. It was exciting to see an elk frolicking in the river in black and white. But then when I started to add color to it and understood more about the color of the leaves and the color of the water and the color of the rocks that the water was rippling over, oh my goodness, that just added a whole different. And then when I switched it over and I went to the vivid pictures of the same thing, my eyes popped out. I went, oh my goodness, now I get it. Look at God's nature and what is happening here. And I went from, that's really interesting. to, oh my goodness, I went from black and white to color HD.
And what does this have to do with retirement? I mean, this is the show is called iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. What does that have to do with going from black and white to color HD?
Because when it is that you're transitioning into retirement or from one stage to another, looking ahead may look very much like that black and white picture. You see it, you know it's somehow important and it's nice and it's good, but there's nothing that is driving you or giving you, as we talked about in another segment, that passion, that DNA of meaning. And so the ability to be able to see something with greater clarity, and what is it that God has? And when you get to that moment, and when all of a sudden it is clear to you what the next steps are, or that you can take next steps, and that aha happens, okay, that's what I call going from black and white, that DNA of meaning. And it's you know, when you've been unsure and you've been searching, and you go through perhaps one of our training programs or one of our discovery programs on the Retirement Reformation, go to retirementreformation.org. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of materials that can help you. And so as you go through whichever one of those pathways is right for you, and as you go through that pathway and you get to the point where you go, okay, all right, that's the next step I'm going to take. And then as that blossoms out for you and turns from black and white to living color, wow, that is exciting.
How long does that process take, though, Bruce? I mean, a lot of people plan for the retirement all their lives. I mean, I can remember thinking as a little kid, I can't imagine being retired, but I know that, you know, one day I'm going to get the, as you use the word frolic, I could be a frolicking elk in the mountains of Colorado, but I am going to have these years of just being able to enjoy myself. But how long does it take people to realize, to get from that black and white picture of their retirement to realizing what God really has in store for them in full HD color? What's that process? How long does it take?
I think there's a couple of answers to that, Jim. One of the answers is that start early so that by the time you get there, you're already moved into the color version. And so that transition becomes much easier because you've already got something you're excited about that you're going to do. So for example, as I wind down my career at Envoy Financial and ramp up the Retirement Reformation decades of my life, I'm just as excited about the Retirement Reformation as I was about Envoy Financial that I did for 30 years. And so my transition stayed in color. That's a great way to do it. But for most people, that's not the way it happens. And it's a little bit, I think we can take as a, when I'm counseling with folks and perhaps there's been a death in the family and a spouse has died, and they come to me and they typically, it's about financial matters or others, and they say, well, what should I do? You know, my answer to them is nothing. Don't do one single thing, just grieve and go through make no decisions. Don't try to force anything to happen. Matter of fact, any decisions you make will probably be dumb ones. So don't do it. But as you get towards the end of that year, you will be renewed. And now you have that opportunity. And so for some, it may be 3 or 4 months. For some, it may be a year. Some may be a year and a half. I think a vacation is fine.
Right.
But a vacation that lasts for a lifetime is a waste and does not have meaning.
Yeah, it's a waste of some incredible talent and wisdom. We'll be right back with more from Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. You're listening to iRetire4Him. Hang tight. We got a great interview coming up in the next segment.
You've spent decades making financial plans for your retirement years. But have you done any life planning? God has a plan for your life, and it includes living out your faith in your retirement years with meaning, purpose, and intentionality. Go out to retirementreformation.org and click on our Resources tab. Download a copy of the book, Charting Your Course, and get started with life planning today. Simply download a copy of Charting Your Course at retirementreformation.org. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. You know, every middle segment of every podcast, we bring on a special guest. Bruce, you've got a very special guest for us today.
I do indeed. I have MARCIA HECKMAN. And MARCIA and I have known each other for, probably close to 45 or 50 years, I would think. And I've just watched as she's had just an amazing career as a mom, as a prayer warrior, and living her life fully as a Christian. So MARCIA, just tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us just a bit about your family, and then I want to ask you about what you're doing with your painting in the other room.
Okay, well, I grew up in a religious home, and then I always, even as a third grade, I remember wondering, it seems like something's missing inside of me. And I would look in the mirror. I was the middle child of 3 girls, and I would wonder, this is the outside, but it seems like something's missing inside. And I asked my mom, do you ever feel like that? And she's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But it was really God that I was missing, a relationship with Jesus. So the years went on. God blessed me, in spite of the fact I didn't actually know him, and gave me some honors, got into college, and I still had this hunger. And he placed me next to a girl in my dorm who had just come to know Christ in high school through a Young Life camp. And she was radiating Jesus, and I didn't know what she had that was different, because she didn't really say it out loud. But one day she said, isn't it great to know Christ and see him working in your life, assuming that I had that because I would go to church with her. And I said, I don't have it. How do I get it? And she invited me to Campus Crusade gathering, and I accepted Christ the first meeting. And it was like, I couldn't get over it, that he actually came into my heart. You know, all I did was ask, and I was just amazed that he would come in my heart, and I knew he was there. I had such an emptiness inside, and he was there. And I began to tell everyone the best I could, especially my family, that I went home to visit the next day. And my mom she picked me up at the bus station and looked over and thought, because I said, Mom, amazing thing happened. Jesus is knocking at the door of our hearts. And I heard that at a gathering last night, and I opened that door and I received him in my heart, and he came in. I knew he was there. And she just thought, well, that's nice, but she didn't get it right away. But eventually she did, and my dad and all my sisters and a lot of my friends, because it is such an amazing news that we can know the real creator of the universe and through the person of Jesus.
Well, you know, you've a mom to 12 children.
Yes.
And how many grandchildren? And how many grandchildren now?
33.
33 as of just last week, right? Because it was 32. Yeah, okay. So congratulations. A boy or girl?
A little girl, a little doll. Yes.
Wonderful.
Felicity.
And how beautiful is that? And then you and Randy now have been called to the latest stage of ministry, if you wish, with the Grand Awakening. What is that all about, and what does that mean to you?
Well, it sums up a lot of our hearts for prayer, just passion to have Jesus explode in our land for people to really come to know the reality of Christ. And that comes through revival and awakening that he has brought in the past. We've have, of course, each person that comes to Christ, it's an awakening and it's a revival if you're already a Christian and get back on track with God, or if you're not a Christian and you have an awakening. But when God pours out his Spirit through a revival, we call it, thousands come to Christ. And it's just a major turnaround in an area, and it spreads. So we continue to do as God leads us, to have gatherings with different people from different churches, because we know he wants us to have unity among Christians. Praying, we were on a prayer call last night. I think there were thousands on that one with One Cry, which we used to work with, and it goes across the nation. But we were praying with a group from this area. I don't know if Randy mentioned that. And then all these thousands of people can call in through Zoom and just a phone line and pray with us. And we do the praying, but on that call, they just kind of pray silently because we're
Very
different
cool.
from this area prayed.
Well, the prayer warrior that you are, and the evangelist that you are, that just continues to exude from you. And it doesn't seem like that has abated at all in the 70 plus years that God's had you around. It seems like this retirement period is, you seem to be even more energized, if that's possible.
I am really excited about every person that wants to hear about Jesus, and I never get tired of sharing. It's my heart, that people would come to know him and become followers of Christ. Whatever way, like today I had that idea of the painting. It's just one, I'm thinking they'll put it, it's on like heavy paper, and I'm going to put verses on it. I was doing a painting, and when you just called me in, my paint hands are here, to touch some lives in our neighborhood, a family that we are longing to see really follow him wholeheartedly. They're having some struggles. So
Well, for each one of us, when God plants an idea, then we have the choice of whether we're going to follow it or
Right.
we're going to put it aside. And one of the things that I love about you is you seldom put it aside, and you take those steps. So that's pretty special. Jim, do you have any questions for
I
Marcia?
do. I'm trying to figure out, Marcia, how in the world you ever had time to develop this artistic talent when you had 12 kids? I mean, that means you were probably had kids at home for 40 years. I'm just amazed. 12 kids. That's spectacular.
I guess someone figured out I was pregnant for like over 9 years, total together. But that was he changed our hearts to want those children, as we never thought, we thought maybe 3 or 4, but there was a point where we seriously asked him, and he began to put this again, Bruce, an idea, be open to me to another child. And he just kept changing our heart in providing and making these beautiful little followers of Christ that they don't always follow every day, but they're following him, and it's another way of reaching the world.
You live in a part of the country where there's a lot of young families. How often do you and your husband Randy get a chance to speak into those families to talk about procreation and talk about having large families and the purpose in that and the joy in that? How often do you get a chance to encourage them?
And you've got your new book that just came out too. So.
Plug the book too.
It's Sweeter by the Dozen, and it's really, I'm not kidding. I mean, Randy wrote it. He's been writing it for 30 years probably, and it has so much, it's so readable, and it just tells the real state of how we are blinded to being open to this need that God wants to make people. And there's need for people in our countries. It's just, that's a resource that is not just in a Christian sense, but it brings blessing to a country to have more people. And he could tell you the facts on it, but you should all have it. It's amazing.
Well, I tell you what we're going to do. If you'll go to retirementreformation.org, we'll put that book up on the website, and you can find it there at retirementreformation.org, and be able to get the book there. So we'll see what we can do to spread the word.
Marcia, one last question for you. There's a lot of ladies out there listening to the show today that are thinking, I just thought of retirement as a time to maybe start quilting or doing some more crocheting, but you're an active minister of the gospel every day. How do you pass that on to your other friends who are in their retirement age years, but they shouldn't be retiring, that they need to be out there in the playing field? How do you communicate that to your friends?
We got to start. I guess, there's verses about being desperate in the Bible. The Lord hears the prayers of the destitute. He will listen to their plea. And it's, if you feel like isn't God worthy of being glorified through our lives in whatever way he would choose? And he is a personal God, and he speaks to us. And one of the ways he especially told me is he wants me to be a pipe of love to my husband. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and even if I did, no one can really have God's love without God doing it through them. So I just go to God. When I don't have God's agape love for my husband, I even go face down at times in the evening or night, in the middle of the night, if I'm like, God, you got to help me. Show me the truths I need to be that pipe of love to my husband and others. And he gives me insights in the Word. I get up and he'll guide me in the Bible and give me insights and show me areas that I need to have his truth in order to be a good pipe of his love to my husband and then to others. And just give yourself to Jesus, because he works with people who need him. And if you can't do this, if you're not excited about life, just start where you are. Jesus, help me. I want my life to count. I can't make it count. You just help me. Show me what you need to say to me to make me a better vessel. I give you my loaves and fishes, whatever I have. And I just pour out myself like that ointment that Mary poured on his feet. I give myself to you, God. Use me. I want every minute of my life to count for you, God. I don't want to waste my life. I don't want to go in a corner of sadness and self-introspection. I want to hear what you're saying to me, and then I want you to be my life and just give it out to the world to be a light for you, God, because you deserve it. You are worthy. You gave everything for us, and we want to give everything for you, God. And I pray it for every one of my children and my friends. I want my neighborhood to know him. I just want everyone to be his so he can be glorified.
Well, Marcia, that's just, so special. And I just love the terminology, and hopefully you won't mind if I appropriate it as being a pipeline of love.
That's it. That's what he told me to do. When I said, what is my main purpose to bring awakening to this nation? You be a pipe of my love to your husband. And that's only going to happen through Jesus through me.
Right.
Well, I think all of us can take that idea of iRetire4Him and put that idea of a pipeline to love to your spouse,
exactly.
To your children, to your neighborhood,
everyone.
to your world.
And even to ourselves. We need to like who we are. But I forgot to answer how I had time to paint. It's because my husband gave me this break every week or so to go and take these dumb bunny art classes. And then I would learn to do a landscape, and I learned, and mostly I pray, and I give my art, like everything else, to God, my cooking. And I say, Jesus, would you do this painting through me and help me and make it something that brings glory to your name? And then he somehow does. It's a miracle. It's pretty fun.
Very good. Well, I tell you what, maybe you'd be so kind as to at least take a picture of that when you're done and send it to me.
Okay.
I can put that alongside the book. So with that, we thank you for being flexible. We thank you for being available. We thank both you and Randy for what you do. Yeah. And just, I think all of us now have an enhanced vision of what iRetire4Him can be.
Amen.
So Jim, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, Bruce. We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Hang on.
Membership has its privileges. And with the Retirement Reformation, it's true. We have 3 levels of membership to access our growing wealth of resources. We also provide discipleship and training to bring the Retirement Reformation alive in your life. So join us. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Membership tab. Choose the level of membership that will help you rethink, retool, reframe, and reform your retirement today. The basic level is free, so you can get started today. Take the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. retirementreformation.org. Let's get back to more iRetire4Him.
And welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, joined by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. Please check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. You can find the book that we've been talking about on our shows, on this show, Finding Freedom, Understanding the Power of a Future Funded Ministry. Out there on Retirement Reformation, you can find out about all the books that Bruce has written, specifically designed to help equip you, the Christ-following retiree, to live out your retirement years in fully funded joy and purpose and meaning. Bruce, there are so many people that prepare for saving for retirement, but never plan on how they will spend a day of their retirement. How do you help people make sure they're prepared for both, and to stop saving and to start spending and to spend it on that future funded ministry.
It's interesting. As you ask the question, I'm reminded of a category of people that I've been blessed to counsel over the years, where they are fantastic savers. I mean, they can save. Oh my goodness gracious, they can pinch a penny until the rascal squeaks. But now it comes to retirement time, and I can't get them to spend any of it. I can't get them to spend it to give to ministry causes. I can't get them to spend it on themselves. I can't get them to spend it on anybody else. And so it's interesting. There's a segment of our society that is so good at saving, but they are just terrible at spending. Now you've got the other side, obviously, where they're just great at spending and have saved nothing. So we can talk about all sides of it, but I think the key is to be is that the financial side of your life is there to support the spiritual and the ministry and the family side of life. It's not the other way around. And so that is money important? Well, here's a guy who spent 30 years prompting people to save financially for retirement. Listen to what I'm about to say. Money is the least important of the issues unless you don't have any. So money is the least important of the issues unless you don't have any. So what's one of the ways we find freedom? Well, to have saved appropriately, or for a large number of people are working in retirement, some of them because they have to, and some of them because they want to, and some of them because it provides some additional financial freedom. So in fact, they can give, they can support the ministry areas that God's called them to, and they can afford to investigate and step into areas that they wonder about. So for example, if you're passionate about, as we talked about in another session, about children, about young people, and that just kind of chokes you up, and that's something. So you start down the track of seeing how you can support ministries that support young people at your church, and then you realize when you take that next step, you realize that there's a subset of those young people that really gets your heart. Those are the disabled, for example. Boy, that just really grabs my heart. So now then you look into organizations that support those. You find ways in your church. You find out your church doesn't have a ministry that has anything to do with the disabled, and it's just a forgotten group, and you start to step into that piece. Then God takes you on a mission trip, and you go over to Africa, and you see just a whole bunch of disabled kids, and you go, oh my goodness gracious, we got to do something about this. That's the kind of a sequence that God will take us through when we take that first step. And as my grandfather once said, Jim, he's not once, he said it a whole bunch of times.
Said it once, said it a million times.
Yeah, he's a whole bunch of times. He said, Bruce, remember, once begun is half done.
So Bruce, how does the Retirement Reformation help take people from black and white to HD full color? That's how we started off the show today with your example of taking that picture of that elk that was frolicking in the river out in front of the cabin you guys had rented, and taking it in black and white, and then kind of sort of 70s color, and then 2020s full vivid HD color. How does the Retirement Reformation help people do that with their retirement, how they're going to spend their retirement years? How does the Retirement Reformation lead them along that path to full HD color?
One of the ways that is critical to taking those steps, Jim, is really having a clear understanding of who God has created you to be. And through experientially, you have become. And so one of the steps to being able to know how to help others is to have a very clear picture of who you are in relation to skills, talents, and abilities, who you are in relationship to God, and where you are in that spiritual journey. So one of the key pieces to the Retirement Reformation is to provide courses, materials, support to help you to understand who you are, which is one of the key steps in knowing what it is that God would then have you do.
What does Scripture have to say about all this, Bruce?
Well, Scripture talks about, and whether we, let's just think about Paul for a minute.
Okay.
And here he was, putting in prison, being the biggest bad guy that he could possibly be. And, God met him, and through a miraculous interface, changed him totally. But he didn't change who he was. He changed who he was in Christ. And so all the preparation that Paul had, all the preparation that he had from his study, from the years of study, prepared him to have the greatest impact on the New Testament Christian community than anyone else in the world. And so there you see this preparation. Was there an aha moment? Oh man, did it go for Paul from black and white to color HD? Boy, you bet it did. But it's still built upon all of the experiences and all of the things that who Paul was as a human being that God then now brought together in order to do that. And then to remember, let's go back to what's this John 15:16? What's the Bible verse that really leads the Retirement Reformation, where Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I chose you to bear fruit that will last. Whatever you ask in my name, my Father will give to you." And then he adds with the final shot, and don't forget to love your neighbor. And so it's very clear that God has chosen us, prepared us, encourages us, and wants us to follow him. And when we do, we'll experience joy, contentment, we'll find meaning, and we'll be able to persevere through difficult challenges. And when it's all said done, we'll go from black and white to color HD.
Bruce, what a great example. I can't imagine how Paul the Apostle, working in fuzzy black and white, and he meets Jesus on the road to Damascus. And within 3 days, when I believe it was Ananias came and took the scales off of his eyes, when he saw again with his eyeballs, for the very first time, it was full color HD, and he realized, holy smokes, how in the world did I miss it? What a great one. And we want to help you avoid those same mistakes. Let us at the Retirement Reformation help you get out of the fuzzy black and white picture of what your retirement years can look like to full HD color. Check us out online, retirementreformation.org. Thank you, Bruce Bruinsma. What a great picture of example for us today. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. All right, you've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, the founder of the Retirement Reformation, Bruce Bruinsma. We're Christ followers pursuing purpose in our retirement. So ultimately, we can all say, I retire for him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.